I'm Rachel Linwood. I'm 34, and everything changed the night of my father's retirement gala. It was supposed to be a celebration of legacy, his legacy. The ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers, the air thick with perfume, polished speeches, and generations of perfectly pressed Linwood pride. I stood near the back, clapping politely as my father raised his glass to toast his true successors. Then he paused and looked directly at me. "You can step out now, Rachel," he said, voice calm but razor sharp. "This moment is for family." The applause didn't stop. But I did. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Because the second I turned toward the door, I heard a chair scrape. And the man who had stood by me through it all, stood up again. That moment changed everything. Growing up as the youngest Linwood meant learning early what earned approval, and what didn't. My father, Charles Linwood, built Linwood Maritime from nothing. He was the kind of man who read stock reports over breakfast and called emotions distractions. He expected perfection, not effort. Results, not dreams. My mother, Grace, was a gentlewoman who once painted with oils and read me bedtime poems, until my father convinced her that art was a waste of her time. By the time I was 10, her laughter had grown quieter. By the time I was 16, she had faded into someone I didn't recognize. My siblings, Damon and Elise, followed the Linwood blueprint with precision. Damon took over logistics, Elise ran public relations. Ivy League degrees, board memberships, country club weddings. And then there was me. I liked to sketch. I liked science fiction novels and volunteering at the public library. I once told my father I wanted to study architecture. He blinked. "That's just drawing for people who want to stay broke," he said. And that was that. I got a partial scholarship to study design at a state university, working nights as a barista and freelancing on weekends. I graduated with honors. My father didn't attend the ceremony. He sent an email. 2 sentences. Years passed. I built a sustainable home design firm from the ground up, Holloway and Linwood, though the Linwood part was only there for legal reasons. My fiancée, Jonah Reed, was the first person who made me feel seen. Not as the family misfit, but as a builder. A visionary. A woman worth celebrating. He's a civil engineer with kind eyes and a grounded soul. My father tolerated him the way someone tolerates a mild inconvenience, barely acknowledging him. We eloped in Vermont. No announcement, no expectation. So when the retirement gala was announced, a formal event at the Roseworth Grand Hotel, I almost didn't go. But Jonah convinced me. "Maybe this is your chance," he said. "To be seen. Or to finally walk away." I wore a navy gown. Subtle. Strong. Just like I felt. But standing in that ballroom, watching my father toast everyone but me, I realized something. I was never invisible. I was excluded, on purpose. The air in the ballroom went still after my father's words. "You can step out now, Rachel. This moment is for family." The murmur of side conversations dulled. Champagne flutes paused mid-air. Even the string quartet faltered before returning to the safe comfort of classical background noise. I felt dozens of eyes on me, all waiting to see how I'd respond. Some were curious. A few smug. Most indifferent. I hadn't planned on speaking. But the fire in my throat burned hotter than the humiliation. And just as I took a step backward, I heard the scrape of a chair. Jonah. My husband of 2 years, soft-spoken, steady, a man who chose patience over pride, stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't throw a drink. He simply walked across the floor, all the way to me, as if the crowd didn't exist. And then, standing beside me, he turned to the entire ballroom. "I wasn't planning on saying anything tonight," Jonah said, voice clear and calm. "But I guess it's time someone in this room acknowledged the actual architect of a legacy." You could hear a pin drop. Rachel Linwood is the reason 23 low-income families in Massachusetts have sustainable, affordable homes. She's spoken at environmental summits. She's been featured in Modern Build and Ecovision. But most importantly, she's someone who never needed your approval to succeed. She built her own table when none of you offered her a seat. Then he took my hand. And if this moment is for family, then I'm proud to be her family, and I'd rather be standing out here with her than sitting among people who can't recognize greatness when it's their own blood. Gasps. Shifts in chairs. A few people applauded, quietly, nervously. I wasn't sure whether to cry or laugh. I just squeezed his hand. And together, we walked out. We didn't speak until we got to the car. The valet handed Jonah the keys without a word, and we drove in silence for several blocks, past the glowing hotels, the empty sidewalks, and the place I used to dream of starting over. Finally, I whispered, "Thank you." He didn't need to ask what for. He just looked over at me with that familiar calm. "You never owed them anything," he said. "But you do owe yourself peace." Peace? It sounded like a distant shore I'd been too afraid to swim toward. Later that night, back in our modest apartment with its creaky floorboards and hand-painted walls, I opened the folder I'd tucked in my purse for the gala. The one I never planned to show anyone. Inside were copies of emails, old financial ledgers, a notarized letter from my mother, written a year before she passed. In it, she apologized for the silence. For not standing up to him. For letting me believe I was less because I didn't fit into his mold. And at the bottom of the envelope, the deed to the original Linwood property. The land my great-grandmother once owned. The one my father sold for corporate expansion. Except, he hadn't. She had quietly willed it to me, bypassing him entirely. That land? Now the site of the community housing project I built last year. He didn't even know. And somehow, that was the closure I didn't know I needed. I didn't confront him. I didn't fight. I simply kept building, just like I always had. But the next day, headlines began to circulate. Linwood Gala overshadowed by shocking public statement, retired CEO's daughter gains praise after emotional walkout, who is Rachel Linwood? For the first time, people asked that question with wonder, not pity. And the best part? I didn't need their answers. 2 days after the gala, the silence from my family was deafening, but it didn't hurt the way I expected it to. There were no apologies. No texts. No calls. Not even a passive-aggressive email. But something unexpected did happen. A reporter from the Boston Ledger reached out. She'd been at the retirement event. She wanted to interview me, not about my father, but about me. About the housing work. The design firm. The community impact. Jonah was cautious. If you speak up now, it becomes public. You okay with that? I was. I was tired of hiding my story to protect people who never protected me. So, I spoke. Carefully. Honestly. No scandals. No dragging names. Just the truth of what it's like to grow up unseen in a house full of eyes. When the interview came out, I didn't expect much. But the response stunned me. Young women sent emails thanking me for sharing. Former classmates messaged to say they'd always wondered why I disappeared after sophomore year. A local nonprofit offered a partnership grant. One publisher even reached out about a memoir. But then, the call came. Not from my father. From Elise, my sister. When I answered, Elise's voice was tight. Controlled. Like someone trying not to spill red wine on white carpet. Rachel, she said, you need to stop. Stop, what? Talking to the press. Making this into some sob story. I laughed, quietly. You think I planned this? You embarrassed Dad. He humiliated me, Elise. Publicly. Repeatedly. A beat of silence. Then, something I didn't expect. I didn't know about Mom's letter, she said. Her voice wavered. Or the deed. Or any of it. You're not the only one he controls. I sat down slowly, heart thudding. Elise, did he make you sign over your shares too? More silence. Then a whisper, he threatened to cut me out of the trust if I didn't. Suddenly, the perfect sister didn't sound so perfect anymore. I have documents, I said carefully. Records. If you want the truth, I'll show you. But I'm not staying quiet. Her voice cracked. I'll come by tomorrow. For the first time in years, the golden daughter sounded human. Elise arrived at noon the next day, alone, in jeans and no makeup. That alone told me this wasn't a performance. She sat across from me in my tiny office, staring at the letter from our mother. Tears spilled without warning. He told us she never finished the will. That everything defaulted to him. He lied, I said gently. And he used us both. I pulled out another file, the one I hadn't shown anyone yet. It held documentation of donations my father made in our names. Funds that disappeared from trusts, property sold off that was never disclosed. Elise covered her mouth. Rachel, this is fraud. I nodded. And it's been going on for over a decade. By the end of the afternoon, we'd made a decision. We weren't going to fight dirty. We were going to fight legally, and strategically. Elise reached out to Damon that night. I didn't expect him to care. But his response came quickly, he sold my portfolio too. In 48 hours, the three of us, once scattered, distant, and divided, had begun drafting a united front. Not out of revenge. Out of truth. Out of legacy. Out of finally standing for ourselves. By Monday morning, the Linwood siblings, once picture-perfect on the outside, fractured within, had a group chat. It wasn't warm. It wasn't nostalgic. But it was real. Damon sent over spreadsheets, legal correspondences, and emails our father never thought to hide. He had kept everything, quietly collecting evidence for years but never daring to challenge the man who ruled our lives like a monarch. I wanted to confront him when Mom died, Damon admitted in a message, but I thought maybe he'd finally soften. Instead, he got worse. Within days, we met with a financial crimes attorney. She reviewed the documents in silence, then looked up and said 5 words, "Your father committed trust fraud." He'd moved money across shell companies, used Damon and Elise's names to file joint asset transfers without their full consent, and had donated Rachel's community project land using a forged agreement. It wasn't just emotional betrayal anymore, it was criminal. But what struck me most was this: he believed none of us would ever talk to each other. And for years, he was right. On a cloudy Thursday afternoon, we invited him to a meeting. A neutral space. A lawyer present. Quiet. Professional. He arrived 15 minutes late, just like always, making an entrance in his tailored suit and smug smile. "Didn't expect you three to organize anything together," he said, sitting with the confidence of someone who thought he was still in charge. Damon slid the file across the table. Elise kept her eyes locked on our father's face. I stayed silent. As he flipped through the pages, the color in his face began to shift. That confidence began to unravel thread by thread. "These are misinterpretations," he snapped. "No," the attorney replied. "These are federal offenses." He tried to pivot, to guilt, to dismiss. He even glanced at Elise and said, "You wouldn't throw your own father under the bus, would you?" But Elise didn't flinch. "You threw all of us under the bus. One by one. We're just walking away from the wreck." We gave him two choices. A private settlement. Or a public lawsuit that would drag his name, his company, and his empire through the courts. He laughed. Loudly. Arrogantly. Then he stood up and walked out without a word. We thought that might be the end of it. But it was only the beginning. 2 weeks later, the story broke. Former CEO Charles Linwood under investigation for financial misconduct. Children of maritime magnate accuse father of trust fraud, Linwood legacy at risk after shocking allegations surface. We hadn't spoken publicly. Our lawyer had advised us to stay quiet, but someone inside his own office leaked the documents. Maybe a whistleblower. Maybe someone tired of the charade. Calls flooded in. Reporters. Associates. Lawyers. But what mattered more were the quiet messages. From my mother's college friend, who told me how talented she was as a painter, before she gave it all up for his dreams. From a teacher who remembered how often I stayed after class in high school just to avoid going home. From women in community shelters who said my firm's designs gave them dignity. That's when I knew, this story wasn't just about taking down a father. It was about restoring a mother's voice. It was about 3 siblings unlearning silence. And it was about me, Rachel Linwood, stepping into a legacy not built on power, but truth.